as a man, to me, masculinity is self-imposed structure, self-imposed rules. That's actual freedom. That's masculinity. I can do anything. So what are my rules? What are my values? What are my standards? What are my boundaries that I build myself? Like fame in of itself is the fame monster. It's the ultimate drug for anyone that doesn't have a self, you know, and so it's sort of externalized value through, external validation.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Breaking Point podcast. Today we are here with Christian, aka Better Man, and we're going to talk a bit about dating, but we're also going to talk about just like male life and his opinions and his background and what's going on. So that's a very short introduction on my part. Christian, do you want to tell people what you're doing and how long you've been doing it for?
Well, thanks for having me, Ollie.
Nice one.
And good to be on the show. Yeah, so I have been working in the masculinity coaching space on and off for about 5 years in different formats. And so I just started this Better Man brand this year, actually, at the beginning of the year. And yeah, I've sort of transitioned over from I was in the music industry for 25 years as a producer, originally as an artist and then as a producer. And then really in around COVID, when everything started to get a bit weird, work started drying up in the music industry, and I just was wondering about what else I wanted to do. And I think as part of the hero's journey of any man, you go through different parts of your life and discovering new aspects of your own self and masculinity. And, you know, I was married and all that and got divorced and sort of came out the other side trying to figure out what it meant to be a man in this modern age. And that lent me down this pathway of self-discovery and sort of getting to understand my role in society as a man, but also women and the feminine and female psychology and then why my relationships all turned out the same ultimately, if you look at the patterns, and then what part of that was mine, and then also what are we working with? What am I looking at when I'm looking at a woman? And sort of trying to understand the game essentially, which is what it turns out it is. And so Better Man sort of is the accumulation of my own life's experience, and also just I've gone completely obsessed into understanding female psyche, and then also just psychology, Jungian psychology, Nietzsche, Arthur Schopenhauer, and even like neuro people like Peterson, and just, you know, the red pill space certainly was a world that I flirted with, and, you know, there's so much to talk about, but essentially I went through my own version of discovery of all of this and have sort of collected it all into what I would say is my brand of it, which is, I think, offering something new, but with a lot of similarities with the things that have come before us and the great men that have come before us that have taught us.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you've got to try and reinvigorate the traditions with modern isms, but you've got to hold on to what was key, because if it's stood the test of time, then there's probably a good reason why it's so relevant. So that's a lot to get through. That was a really interesting. I wasn't expecting all that. So I guess, I mean, I'm interested in the music producer bit. What was that like?
It was great, man. I mean, I got into the music industry when I was very young, when I was 15. And so I was sort of thrown into it. I had a record deal, a major label deal when I was 16 in the UK. And that sort of kickstarted my life. I basically left school prior to doing GCSEs and all that. And just sort of jumped into being an adult.
Yeah.
Very, very young, and I wasn't ready to come out of the oven, and I got thrown into the music industry. You know, we're seeing more and more the realities of the music industry.
Yeah.
You know, we're seeing that reality of what you end up having to do in order for success in that industry now that everything's sort of becoming revealed. But back then it was all hidden, and I was in it from those days. So watching it all sort of fall apart now in the modern world, where the curtain's being drawn back, has been quite interesting as a voyeur because I was in it, so I know all about it. And anyway, so that sort of threw me down that path for a long time, and I think ultimately the Peter Pan syndrome, in many ways, you just sort of like staying in this perpetual youth of being an artist. And I didn't really grow up in the way that most lads grow up. I think, I got thrown into this other world, and I sort of had immediate value in the world, and I didn't understand what really was going on. That I was like I was in a band, and I didn't struggle at the front end. Actually, my struggle came later because I was sort of thrown into this hyper world where I had value because I was a musician. So because most young men don't really have much value. They're not the ones on the yacht. It's the young girls on the yacht. And the young lads really don't really get anywhere until at least they start hitting 30. But my life experience was completely in reverse, and it's almost like I went through that struggle that the young men went through older in life, when I was kind of spat out the other end of the music industry.
And that's
yeah.
And there's probably a Jungianism in there, that whole sort of like reverse Benjamin Bugs style thing.
Exactly. I go more with Mork and Mindy. That's my reference.
What was that? Who's Mindy? You can educate me now.
Mork and Mindy. Mork and Mindy. Like it was like a show with Robin Williams' first TV show where it's essentially the same principle as Benjamin Button. Yeah.
Great.
It's my attempt at humor. Let's carry on.
No. I'll need to check out more Mindy. So that's really interesting. You raise a really good point there. The sort of, you almost like experienced like a Love Island fever, in the sense of nowadays we see, obviously you were a lot younger, it's slightly different, but in the sense that people go into like a Love Island reality TV show and they're thrown up into the limelight, and they've got all this attention and sort of stardust around them. And then it just sort of fades away, because that's what naturally happens in life. Things just dissipate. But I mean, to be thrown in it at 16, like, and I agree with you obviously about the music industry. That is, have you read any of Robert Greene's books? Is it Robert Greene? Yeah. And he wrote a book with 50 Cent, didn't he?
48 Laws of Power.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and the 50 Cent book. Yeah, he did that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the music industry is that whole realm. Well, I don't think it's just the music industry. I think it's Hollywood, but I think the music industry works.
What it comes down to is essentially fragmented self, that people that have got a lot of wounding, and most people are fragmented in some way. And then something like the music industry is a culturally accepted place to where we can sort of, like, fame in of itself is the fame monster. It's the ultimate drug for anyone that doesn't have a self, and so it's sort of externalized value through external validation. And on the level of fame, it's that fame monster. You can never quench that insatiable lust that comes from offloading yourself to another in order for you to exist, in order for you to have value. And so many of us are coming through the ranks into the world out of our primary care takers, and we're already fragmented. We've already learned about what love is through the family that we were with, and they've learned it from their family, and it's just gone down the line. And the more we've disconnected from nature over the last 100 years, sort of, that's why we're seeing, to me, such a fragmentation of self, because all of these things that have come in from the culture to sort of numb out the lacking within people. The human's daily life prior to the Industrial Revolution was just, you had fulfillment by just surviving, by being alive and being in community, and tending to the land and looking after the children, and in the village you were just part of a small community where everybody was responsible for the community. And as we've multiplied that out through technology, everybody is sort of removed from responsibility of their own contribution to society, and then technology comes in and fills the gaps of all the things that You solve one problem and you make 10 more from the technology that comes in, and it's sort of like whack-a-mole but in survival.
It is
And
yeah.
you have to go to the gym now rather than spend all day hunting for food. You just have to synthesize these aspects that were part of sort of life that was not just pleasure. And like, we're in a hedonistic society now where we don't have meaning,
Narcissistic one.
other than yes. So it's like there's no meaning, there's no frame, and it's just, does it feel good? Is it, and therefore it is good, right? And that's how we're now measuring the value of something, as if it's pleasurable, which is basically going into full on. I mean, it's just hedonism on steroids. We are at the end of the empire. This is what it looks like. It's just affluence on steroids. And now we're eating the grapes like the Romans were, waiting for the barbarians to come. And that's where we are.
Have you seen the film or you've probably seen Back to the Future? Have you seen Back to the Future 2?
Absolutely.
Then great film. It's the best one. Back to the Future 2 is the best Back to the Future. And then
I saw that at the movie theater.
Really? No,
Yes, sir. I'm 44 now.
No way. That's nuts. Okay, well, you clearly haven't abused. Did you abuse alcohol whilst you were in?
Yes.
You did? Well,
Oh, yeah. I've done everything, man. Oh, yeah. I was a complete lunatic.
Yeah. No, I think, well, maybe there's a benefit to that. Maybe we can get into that coming out the other end. It's probably helped you in some ways. So, yeah, Back to the Future 2 and It's a Wonderful Life. So, both of those films,
Yes.
we see sort of like a dystopian future, like personified. One is when Biff goes and gets the almanac and becomes like Biff Tower and all that. And then the other is when George Bailey doesn't exist and we see what happens to Bailey, whatever it's called, Bedford Falls. And I think that we are now living in those dystopian futures that they predicted back in, 1985 and whatever it was for It's a Wonderful Life. So and obviously the problem with existence and life is that nothing occurs in one sudden turn from 90 to 180 degrees. It just trickles through degree by degree by degree. Given how like our society is salacious beyond belief. It's the things that we promote, as you were talking about, like hedonism, narcissism. And what's even more interesting is that a lot of that, I don't really want to get political because it's more deeper than that, but a lot of that has fallen under the realm of the left, which is supposedly the progressive. When people use the term progressive, they basically, what an honest progressive person thinks progressive means is better. Progressive is better. And we've actually regressed in so many ways in society that it's alarming, I think. And I think one of the reasons that's happened is because we've demonized the past a lot. If you demonize something, you then are justified in any which way to move away and divest yourself from it. And we demonized aspects of the past to such a degree that we now justify behaviors in the modern world because we've had it rewritten of what it actually was like, or at least we've had specific aspects of it amplified.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you get what I mean? And that's a bit of a...
Well, I think it's rather than it's demonized, they simplified.
Okay.
I think that's what's happened, is that they've turned it into a black and white story of morality, and we're judging from the moral compass of today,
That is
the past with today's moral lens, and that is very yeah. Sorry,
you go.
I'm just saying that's been weaponized as a way to self-impose shame on a society through a simplified history of the past. And that is what is controlling people now, because nobody has a real sense of good and evil. And so morality anymore, it's all being eroded because we're too smart for that now. We're smarter than religion. We're smarter than these sort of structures that were oppressive. In black and white, they were just oppressive. So they just rejected it all, right? And so it's now you're just a headless chicken running around wondering, and everybody's just constantly following whatever they're told is the correct way to think. and it's just highlighting, you know, the herd basically, and that's it. And it's, if you are able to zoom out from that and say, okay, well, if all of it's made up, then you land at nihilism, but then you have to build from there. You can't just say it's nihilism, peace out, we're fucked. You've got to go into the next stage of it from the Nietzschean perspective, which is, right, if everything's made up, as a man, to me, masculinity is self-imposed structure, self-imposed rules. That's actual freedom. That's masculinity. You know, it's, okay, I can do anything. So what are my rules? What are my values? What are my standards? What are my boundaries that I build myself? That's the Übermensch, right? That can pull out of this, like, oh, we got another real whatever. And it's just, all of that is noise to control the masses. And essentially what I see it as is a war against masculinity and femininity now. But it's been, it's weaponized masculinity and weaponized femininity, essentially. And that's the politics now. The left is the feminine and the right is the masculine. And they're both toxic.
They're both. Yeah.
You know? So it's a toxic war.
When I look at my generation, you know, there are exceptions, but I'm not filled with pride is the wrong term. I don't want to say pride. I'm not filled with, I don't know, I'm not filled with inner peace, I guess, because fundamentally peace is the goal. But yeah, no, I completely agree.
Well, that is on you. That is on you, though. Still, ultimately, I would say that don't look at the culture, remove yourself from it, and that's where we get to as individuals, create that inner peace. So I'm saying, like, it is an inside job, and that all of that, when we look outward towards all of these systems, and we say, oh, look at this, like, my generation's fucked because we're all crazy in social media. That's offloading it. That's externalizing your inner peace. So, and that keeps you in servitude to the wind, the changing of the guard and the cultural shift. So I would say that actually it's about taking the power back and making it an inside job despite the conditions. That's the Stoic way. It's when you be at peace in the marketplace. You know, when the chaos of the market is going on, the Stoic man is at peace even when he's, like, triggered. If he's angry, is that control of feeling but not reacting. And that is the work of a man, I would say.